You know, for millennia, the world's greatest empires, they all made the exact same fatal mistake. They marched onto the Iranian plateau, absolutely certain they could wipe this civilization right off the map. But they couldn't. This is the incredible story of how one culture survived truly impossible odds, not by winning every battle, but by somehow winning eternity itself.
I mean, really think about it. We have these giant civilizations that just vanished. They dissolved into history. You've got Babylon, the Hittites, the mighty Assyrians, poof, they're gone. But Iran, despite getting hit with one catastrophic blow after another, we're talking Greeks, Arabs, Mongols, it's still here. So what's the secret? What did they have that everyone else didn't?
Well, the answer is as simple as it is absolutely brilliant. They didn't just fight back with swords and shields, they fought back with culture. Time and time again, even after losing on the battlefield, the Iranians did something nobody else could really pull off. They absorbed their conquerors. Seriously, just a few decades after a brutal invasion, you'd find the invaders speaking Persian, building Persian-style buildings, and even wearing Persian clothes.
To really get how they did this, we have to go way back and look at their secret weapon. And nope, it wasn't chariots or some new kind of bow. It was an idea, a religion, born right there on the Iranian plateau that completely flipped human consciousness on its head, Zoroastrianism.
You have to understand, this was a monumental shift in how people thought about, well, everything. Before this, most ancient peoples saw time as a circle, an endless repeating cycle of seasons of life and death with no real end goal. But Zoroastrianism comes along and is one of the first traditions in history to say, no, time is a line. It has a clear beginning, creation, and a definite end, a final battle between good and evil, and a last judgment. This very idea would eventually flow into Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, fundamentally shaping the world we all live in today. And right at the heart of this worldview was something called dualism. The universe wasn't just some random sequence of events. Oh no, it was a total, all-out war between good and evil, between right and darkness. So to be an ancient Iranian wasn't just about where you lived, it meant you were a soldier of light, actively fighting for truth and order against chaos and darkness. Now that gives the people a powerful, unifying sense of purpose.
And trust me, they were going to need that purpose. This whole ideology became the very engine of their resilience. It allowed them to endure this incredible cycle of invasion and absorption that would define their history for thousands of years to come. So, look at this. On 3 completely separate occasions, a conquering force showed up that by all rights should have been game over. First, you've got the Greeks under Alexander. Then, centuries later, the Arab Caliphate arrives with a powerful new religion. And finally, the Mongol apocalypse, which literally left towers of skulls in its wake. Any one of these should have been a fatal blow.
So let's start with the Greeks. In 330 BC, Alexander the Great and his Macedonian phalanxes just steamroll the Persian army. The magnificent capital Persepolis is burned to the ground. For all intents and purposes, the story of Iran is over. It's now just another province in a new Greek empire.
But then, that secret weapon kicks in. The survival mechanism activates. Alexander himself starts wearing Persian clothes and adopting their fancy court etiquette. His whole plan of Hellenization, making everyone Greek, just fizzles out. And within about a century, a native Iranian tribe, the Parthians, rises up, kicks the Greeks out, and reestablishes a new Persian empire that would go toe-to-toe with Rome for centuries. Okay, now fast forward to the next great test. In the 7th century, the Sassanid Empire, already exhausted from centuries of war with Byzantium, finally falls to the armies of the Arab Caliphate. A new religion, Islam, arrives. Now, for other powerful ancient cultures, like in Egypt or Syria, this was it. They were permanently Arabized. Their languages, their identities, mostly replaced. So for Iran, it really seemed like the end had come, again.
But not in Iran. After that devastating military defeat, the Iranians launched their cultural counterattack. Persian bureaucrats and administrators became so good, so essential, that they basically ended up running the entire government of the caliphate. And the Persian language, Farsi, it didn't just survive, it thrived, exploding into a golden age of poetry and science. They had been conquered, sure, but in many ways, they were running the show. Then came the ultimate test, the apocalypse. In 1220, the Mongols arrived. And they didn't just conquer, they annihilated. We're talking entire cities slaughtered, ancient irrigation systems that had existed for 1,000 years just wiped off the face of the earth. It truly seemed that Iran was about to be turned into a permanent pasture for nomads.
But what happened next is probably the most stunning example of this cultural superpower. These fierce Mongol conquerors, who were used to living in yurts on the steppe, they convert to Islam. They make Persian the official language of their new state, and within just a few generations, the descendants of Genghis Khan are spending fortunes to build grand Persian mosques and patronize the very culture they had almost utterly destroyed. Incredible.
So this amazing cycle of resilience, of absorbing one conqueror after another, eventually leads to the forging of a new and distinctly modern Iranian identity. And it's really built on two core pillars. In 1501, the Safavid dynasty makes a huge move that reshapes Iran forever. While they fiercely protected and promoted their ancient Persian culture, the language, the poetry, the art, they also declared Shia Islam the official state religion. Now, this was a massive decision. It created this unique dual identity that, for the first time, really separated Iran both culturally and religiously from its powerful Sunni neighbors like the Ottoman Empire. The 20th century, though, brought a whole new kind of pressure. Iran found itself caught in the middle of the Great Game, this intense rivalry between the Russian and British empires, who both wanted to control it. This struggle for sovereignty sparked a huge constitutional revolution in 1906. Then, out of that chaos, the Pahlavi dynasty rises and starts this massive push to modernize the nation. And then comes this really symbolic step in 1935, an official order to the world to stop calling the country Persia, which they felt sounded old and exotic, and to use its ancient, proud name, Iran. And this constant drive for Iran to define itself on its own terms brings us right to the present day. And it brings us to a really fascinating paradox that exists in the minds of people all over the world. If there's one thing we've learned, it's that the history of Iran is a history of radical pivots, and the 20th century's biggest one, without a doubt, came in 1979, the Islamic Revolution. The monarchy was overthrown, a theocratic republic was established, and the country's relationship with the rest of the world was, once again, turned completely upside down. And that brings us to the paradox. Think about it. Today, the word Iran often brings to mind images of geopolitics, sanctions, and tense news reports. But the word Persia, it hasn't disappeared. It's almost become this romantic, mythical idea, a land of fairy tales, flying corpets, and lost grandeur. You've got two names for one land, representing this constant, relentless struggle over what its identity truly is. So when you look at the whole story, it's clear, from shaping how we think about time itself to absorbing some of the most powerful conquerors in history, this culture has an unbelievable mechanism for survival. The question on the table is, after 5,000 years of survival and transformation, what comes next? What's the next chapter in this incredible, unending story?